I'm going to show you how to win 80% of your March Madness bets in this video. Now, if you guys stay to the end, I'm going to show you exactly the websites you need to correlate and find the best plays during March Madness. So let's go ahead and get into it. First thing we're going to look at here, okay, is going to be line movement. This is how you're going to be able to narrow down what plays you're going to look further into. All right, so for example, let's say Kansas is playing Arkansas. Okay, let's say the opening line, let's say we're going to look at the total here. Let's say the opening line, 150. Current line is 153. What we're looking at here, since it went up, okay, you would mark this game down, you would write it down as the over. We're going to look at the over. So if the number goes up, we're looking at the over. If the number goes down from opening, we're looking at the under. Okay, so remember that. Up is over. Down is under. Now, same thing goes with the spread. All right, let's say on the spread opened up at minus 10 and it's currently at minus 13. If it goes up, we're looking at the favorite. If it goes down, we're looking at the underdog. Now let's get to number 2. Once you have that list down, next thing you're going to look at is going to be, this is going to be more common in the conference tournaments. All right, you're going to look at the head-to-head trends in the last 2 years. Okay, just in the last 2 years, because that's going to be the most current of if that lineup, played together for a minute. You go back 5-10 years, obviously that doesn't matter in college because they were completely different teams. So if we look in the last 2 years, the head-to-head trends there. What we want is favorable trends to match up with what we have written down from step 1. So whether it be an over, an under, the favorite, or the underdog, we want favorable trends of at least, at least 80% or more. So once you have from step 1, teams down, totals down with line movement of at least 3 points or more, at least 3 points or more, the next thing we're doing here is head-to-head trends in the last 2 years, and 80% or more favoring what you have written down from step 1. Now let's get to step 3. Step 3 is going to consist of money movement. So what you want is, you want the majority of bets to be on the opposite side of what you're looking at. And I'm going to show an example of one game, and I'm going to pop a screenshot up so that way you guys can see. But you want the majority of bets to be on the opposite side and the money to be with your bet. Okay? So what it looks like I said, I'm going to give a screenshot here again so that way you guys can see exactly what that looks like. You want it to be completely opposite, because what we want here is we want the public to be all over the opposite. Okay? We want the public, which is the bets. The majority of bets is going to be the public because they're the ones that put in a lot of tickets. So we want the majority of bets to be on one side, where we want the heavy money. That's where people are putting heavy money down that have sharp action. We want that to be on the other side, the side that we're looking at. Okay? Because we want to be on the side with the money. We don't want to be on the side where the majority of the public is at. Now, once you go through those 3 steps, there's one more step that I like to add here. Okay? And it's going to depend on what your bet is going to be. So if you're looking at an over on a total, for example, what you want to look for on an over is you want to look for the stats on both teams' offensive efficiency. Okay, you want the offensive efficiency rating for both of these teams to at least be in the top 50. Okay, top 50 in the country, at least. And to correlate with that as well, what you want is tempo. You want the tempo to be top 50 as well. So what does that mean? That means possessions. Okay, that means how fast they play. So what you want is you want an offensive efficiency top 50 team that plays fast. Both of those teams should play fast and they should have a high offensive efficiency rating. So that way, what happens there? More opportunity for more buckets. Okay, more opportunity for more points. And if they're efficient, that means they're going to score. Okay, so that's what your rule should be for an over. Now, for an under, it should be the complete opposite of this. Okay, complete opposite for an under. The under should mean the offensive efficiency rating. Offensive efficiency rating should be bottom, and we can stretch this actually, bottom 100. Okay, and the tempo, same thing. Tempo to be bottom 100. So now here what you got is 2 teams that don't necessarily play offense the greatest with shooting and they're not that efficient. And then they play half-court offense where it's slow and they run a lot of plays. So that's a good mixture for an under. Now let's get into the spread so that way I can show you exactly what to look for with the spreads that correlate with this as well. Now for a spread, when you're looking at a favorite, okay, what you want is you want that favorite to have at least a top 20 defense. Okay, why? Because defense is what is able to cover spreads. It's not offense. Okay, as long as the defense can hold that opposing team to not scoring as much, they're usually able to cover the spread that they have listed on there. But we're going to get to that too, because we're not just going to use the spread or the total that the sportsbook gives us. We never do that. All right, we're going to adjust that. I'm going to get to that in a second though. The spread, favorite, top 20 defense. Now, if we're looking at the dog here, okay, we're looking at the underdog. What we want is obviously the opposite of this. Okay, we want the team that they're facing to be bottom 50, because we could stretch this, bottom 50 defense. Okay, because then that means that defense could be lackluster with covering a spread, meaning that the underdog could keep it a closer game within that spread. Okay, because when you have, like I said, a top defense, very hard for an underdog to keep close on the spread, just because that defense is going to be able to be strict and keep their scoring down. As in for the underdog, if you're playing a team, it's complete opposite. So I like to use this example a lot with Alabama. Alabama's a good example here, okay? They score crazy on the offensive end, but defensive end, they literally let people score as well. So a lot of the times those hefty spreads when they're minus 20 or minus 25 or something like that, their defense leaks, and next thing you know, you get a cover because they only win by 17, 18 points or whatnot. Okay, so something to keep an eye out for definitely during March Madness for your spreads and your totals, how to identify those. Now, once we have our play down, the next thing we're looking at is going to be alternate lines. Okay, alternate lines is what we're looking at. We're not going to take the number the sportsbook gives us, not on the spread, not on the total. So what we're trying to eyeball here, okay, we're trying to eyeball the lines that are going to be between minus 270 and minus 300. Now, the reasoning behind that is because here implied probability would be 73%, here would be 75%. If we're hitting 80% consistently with these alternate lines, what's going to happen? Okay, we're going to have a 7% edge here, and we're going to have a 5% edge here. Okay, so as long as we're using these alternate lines and we're hitting at 80%, and I'm going to show you guys exactly proof of how this works if you stick. All right, stick to the end. I'm going to show you exactly proof how this works using real plays that I put in. But like I said, if we could hit 80% or better at these lines with either the totals or the spreads, you're going to be able to literally create a gap in March Madness and get an edge of 7 to 5%. Now, before I get to the websites that you want to use to correlate all this together, let me show you some of the proof of how this actually works. So for example, let's just go back for February. All right, let's take a look at February here, and let's look at college basketball. All right, we're just going to pull up basketball here. So let's go ahead and count up the wins here using that strategy. So 1, okay, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 7-1, 8-1, 9-1, 9-2. So at 9-2, going through the month of February, if we just go ahead and correlate that to percentage-wise, that would equal 81%. Okay, that would equal 81% hitting, just like I said, right over that threshold of 80%. So now, if you guys want access to learn exactly how to match what I just showed you right there, or you want the answers just given to you and all the plays for March Madness, make sure you guys click the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and get to the websites that I use. All right, the websites where you can correlate all this stuff. So the websites that you're going to need to access, you don't have to access every single one of these, but these are the ones that I use. So for line movement, you're going to use Vegas Insider. They give you a good showing of exactly what the current line is and the open line is and the consensus line of a lot of sports books. So for the line movement, Vegas Insider. For the trends, I use Covers. Okay, Covers.com. I go to the matchups under the basketball tab, and then I find exactly the matchup between the plays that I'm looking at, and it gives you the head-to-head trends within the last 10. Like I said, we're not going to use the last 10, but they give you the last 10. Okay, so trends, I go to Covers. The money, I use Action Network for this. So Action Network, you do have to subscribe to that because that's not free. Okay, you have to pay to get access to see the money and the bet percentage. But that is what I use for the money and the bet percentage to see where we can get that opposite movement at that we want. And then finally, for the tempo and efficiency, I use team rankings. Team rankings is free. Okay, so you can go on there and you go under college basketball. Possessions per game is your tempo, and then offensive and defensive efficiency is obviously your efficiency marker. But that's what you use. These are the websites that you're going to use to be able to correlate that and to win at least 80% of your March Madness plays.